My name is Andreas Vogt, a 24-year-old Omega from the Frostbane clan. Our people, the wolf clans, have lived alongside humans for generations. We are not magical, nor do we have any special abilities, but we are different. Alphas, betas, and omegas, each with their own role in society. Traditions still linger, though things are changing. I am not a warrior or a leader. I am just a man living in a growing trade town near the Waldhelm Forest, where my ancestors once roamed freely. My life is simple, but as an Omega, there are always small moments that remind me of my place in the world. Today is just another ordinary day. I wake before sunrise as I always do. My small wooden cottage creaks in the cold morning air. With a sigh, I push off the heavy wool blanket and run a hand through my messy hair. Outside, the town is quiet. In the distance, I hear merchants setting up their stalls in the market square. The faint scent of fresh bread drifts through the air. I splash cold water on my face to wake myself up. After dressing in a simple tunic and trousers, I prepare breakfast, dark bread, a slice of cheese, and a cup of herbal tea. As I eat, I glance at the stack of parchments on my desk. Reports, letters, inventory lists, reminders of my work at the trade hall, where I spend my days as a scribe. Omegas were once expected to stay home, but things are different now. Some alphas and betas still don't like it, but I've learned to ignore them. Before leaving, I check my satchel. Ledgers, ink, quill. Then step outside, breathing in the crisp morning air as I head to work. By the time I reach the main street, the town of Varhold is already awake. Merchants call out their wares, apprentices rush to their masters, and travelers make their way through the crowded market. I pass familiar faces, a baker setting fresh loaves on display, a blacksmith's apprentice hauling firewood, a beta healer arranging herbs. People nod in greeting, though some glance at me a little longer than necessary. A silent acknowledgement of my status as an Omega. At the trade hall, I push open the heavy wooden doors. The scent of parchment, ink, and aged wood fills the air. Betas and alphas move around, discussing shipments, trade disputes, and market prices. As soon as I sit at my desk, Garrick, a beta merchant, drops a stack of reports in front of me. The eastern shipment was delayed again, he says. We need updated records before midday. I nod, already opening the ledger. I'll take care of it. The morning passes in a blur of numbers, agreements, and the scratch of a quill on parchment. At midday, I step outside for some fresh air. The sun is high, casting long shadows on the stone streets. I find a quiet spot near the fountain and unwrap my lunch, a pasty filled with meat and vegetables. As I eat, I overhear two young alphas nearby, joking about courtship customs. One laughs about an alpha from another village trying to claim an unwilling Omega. I roll my eyes. Some traditions refuse to die. Before I finish my meal, a familiar voice interrupts my thoughts. You always eat alone, Vogt? I glance up to see Nicholas Eisen, an alpha trader I know from the trade hall. He deals in goods from the southern regions. He stands casually, but like most alphas, he naturally draws attention. I raise an eyebrow. And you always make conversation where it isn't needed, Eisen? He chuckles and leans against the fountain's edge. It's called being sociable. I call it unnecessary chatter. I reply, though there's no real annoyance in my voice. Nicholas just smirks. One day, you'll enjoy my company, Vogt. With that, he pushes off and walks away. I shake my head and finish my meal. Some alphas truly enjoy hearing themselves talk. The afternoon is spent sorting trade records, calculating shipments, and updating contracts. By the time I leave the trade hall, the sun is dipping toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. On the way home, I stop by the market to pick up a few essentials. Vegetables, a wheel of cheese, and some smoked meat. At one stall, an older beta woman chats with me as she hands me a bundle of fresh herbs. You should come to the Harvest Festival next week, she says. There will be dancing, music, good food. I give a polite smile. Maybe. The truth is, large gatherings mean unwanted attention. Alphas, especially the unbonded ones, tend to hover around omegas at festivals. It's not something I fear, but I'd rather not deal with it. Back home, I light a few candles, their glow flickering against the wooden walls. Dinner is simple, a bowl of stew, bread, and a cup of tea. The warmth of the food eases the tension in my shoulders after a long day. I spend the evening reading an old historical account of the wolf clans. The quiet is soothing, a welcome contrast to the noise of the market. By the time fatigue sets in, the moon is high in the sky. I blow out the candles, stretch once, then climb into bed. Tomorrow will bring the same routine: work, quiet moments, occasional conversations with persistent alphas like Nicholas. A simple life. And for now, that's enough. I had never been the type to look forward to dates. In fact, I had spent most of my adult life avoiding them. Relationships could be complicated, and as an omega, there were always certain expectations, ones I had no interest in following. But somehow, Reiner had made me change my mind. We had been together for 3 months, and while I still wasn't sure where things were going, I had to admit, I liked him. He wasn't overbearing like some alphas, nor did he try to control me. He gave me space, respected my boundaries, and most importantly, he made me laugh. Tonight, we had agreed to meet at a small tavern near the market square. It wasn't anything fancy, but that was exactly why I had chosen it. I wasn't interested in grand gestures or expensive meals. I just wanted good food and good company. By the time I arrived, the tavern was already bustling with people. The warm scent of roasted meat and freshly baked bread filled the air, and the lively chatter of merchants, travelers, and off-duty guards echoed around the wooden hall. Then I saw him. Reiner was easy to spot. Tall, broad-shouldered, and with a presence that naturally drew attention, whether he wanted it or not. He sat at a table near the window, looking relaxed but alert, his sharp eyes scanning the room before they landed on me. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips as he stood. "You're on time." I rolled my eyes as I took a seat across from him. "Of course I'm on time. You're the one who's always early." "Habit." He shrugged. "I like being prepared." I smirked. "For what? A surprise attack in the middle of dinner?" "You never know," he said, straight-faced. "These are dangerous times." I shook my head, but I couldn't help the chuckle that escaped me. This was what I liked about Reiner. He was an alpha, but he never made me feel like I had to play the role of a traditional omega. A server came by and we ordered roast lamb, fresh bread, and a pitcher of ale. Simple, hearty food. "So," Reiner said, pouring me a drink, "how was your day?" I took a sip before answering. "Busy." The trade hall was a mess. Missing inventory, delayed shipments, the usual chaos. "Sounds exhausting." I shrugged. "It's not so bad." "And you?" "Spent the day intimidating people as usual?" He smirked. "I only intimidate those who deserve it." "Aha. And how do you decide who deserves it?" Reiner leaned back in his chair, pretending to think. "If they waste my time, they deserve it." I laughed. "Good thing I haven't wasted your time yet." His expression softened slightly. "No, you haven't." There was something about the way he said it, calm, steady, sincere. I wasn't sure how to respond, so I simply reached for my bread and took a bite. We talked about small things after that. The latest town gossip, an upcoming festival, and whether or not his horse was smarter than him, a debate that I was clearly winning. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did. After dinner, we stepped outside. The night air was cool and crisp, the sky dotted with stars. The streets were quieter now, most people having retreated to their homes or continued drinking inside the tavern. We walked side by side, not in a rush to go anywhere. "You know," Reiner said after a while, "I wasn't sure if you actually liked me when we first started this." I glanced at him. "What made you think that?" He gave me a sideways look. "You avoided me for the first 2 weeks." I huffed. "I was being careful." "Were you?" "Yes." He raised an eyebrow. "And now?" I sighed dramatically. "I suppose I like you a little." "A little?" I smirked. "Maybe more than a little." Reiner chuckled, and for a moment, we just walked in comfortable silence. It wasn't perfect. I still had doubts. I still wasn't sure where this would lead. But tonight, under the stars, walking beside him, I was happy. And for now, that was enough. By the time I reached my cottage, the night was still and quiet, only the distant hoot of an owl breaking the silence. Reiner had walked me back, though he hadn't needed to. We stood outside my door, neither of us speaking right away. The glow from my lantern cast soft light over his face, making the sharp angles of his features stand out even more. "You're thinking about something," he said. I leaned against the doorframe. "You assume I think?" He smirked. "I think you overthink." I sighed. "Maybe." There was a brief pause before he spoke again. "I had a good time tonight." I met his gaze. "Yeah, me too." His smirk softened into something else, something almost gentle. For a second, it looked like he was debating something, but then he just reached up and ruffled my hair. I swatted his hand away. "Reiner," he chuckled, stepping back. "Sleep well, Andreas." I rolled my eyes but didn't argue. "Good night, Reiner." I watched as he turned and walked away, disappearing into the dark streets. Then, with a small sigh, I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. I lit a candle and changed into something more comfortable, rolling my sore shoulders as I sat on the edge of my bed. Despite the exhaustion settling in, I felt oddly light. For all my doubts, for all the questions I still didn't have answers to, one thing was certain. I didn't regret tonight. Blowing out the candle, I lay down and pulled the blankets over me. Sleep came easily, and in the quiet stillness of the night, I let myself rest. It had been a few weeks since that night at the tavern, and things between Reiner and me had settled into a quiet rhythm. We saw each other a few times a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just for a walk through town. It was easy, maybe too easy. I had never been in a relationship long enough to know what came next. In the past, things either fell apart quickly or never moved beyond casual. But Reiner was different, steady, patient. He never pushed me for more than I was willing to give. That should have reassured me. Instead, it made me uneasy. So when he showed up unannounced at my door one evening, I wasn't sure how to react. A firm knock echoed through my cottage. I frowned, setting down my book. It was already dark outside. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door. "Reiner." He stood there, looking completely at ease, as if showing up uninvited was the most natural thing in the world. I crossed my arms. "Reiner, what are you doing here?" He held up a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "I brought dinner." I blinked. "You what? Dinner?" He repeated it like I was slow to understand. "I thought you might not have eaten yet." I stared at him. "And what gave you that idea?" He smirked. "You forget that I know your habits. You work late, come home tired, and sometimes don't bother cooking. Am I wrong?" I opened my mouth to argue, but damn it, he wasn't wrong. I sighed, stepping aside. "Fine, come in." Reiner placed the bundle on my small wooden dining table and unwrapped it. Freshly baked bread, roasted chicken, and a jar of honey. It smelled incredible. I sat across from him, still feeling off balance. Why was he doing this? "You didn't have to do this," I said. "I know." He said it simply, like it was obvious. I studied him for a moment, then tore off a piece of bread. "So, what's the real reason you're here?" He raised an eyebrow. "Do I need a reason?" "Yes," I said flatly. "You don't just drop by for no reason." He took a slow bite of chicken, chewing thoughtfully before replying. "I just wanted to see you." Something about the way he said it, so calm, so certain, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, made my stomach twist. I focused on my food. "You're very straightforward. You like that about me." I almost choked on my bread. "Excuse me?" He grinned. "You heard me." I glared at him, but there was no real heat behind it. He wasn't wrong. Damn him. After we finished eating, I leaned back in my chair, feeling warmer than before. Maybe it was the firelight, or maybe it was just him. For once, Reiner was quiet. He watched me. Not in the intense way some alphas did, but with a thoughtful curiosity, like he was waiting for me to speak first. So I did. "This is new for me." I admitted. Having someone who actually pays attention. His expression softened slightly. I know. I glanced away, tracing patterns on the wooden table with my fingertips. It's not that I don't like it. I just don't know how to handle it. Reiner leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. Then don't handle it. His voice was steady. Just let it happen. I let out a slow breath. Just let it happen. For someone like me, that wasn't easy. But for the first time in a long time, I wanted to try. So I looked at him, really looked at him and said, all right. His lips twitched in amusement. All right? I rolled my eyes. Yes, all right. But don't think this means I'll get used to you showing up at my door unannounced. He chuckled, pushing his chair back. Noted. I walked him to the door. For a moment, we just stood there, neither of us in a rush to say goodbye. Then, just as he turned to leave, he glanced back at me. I'll see you soon? And this time, I didn't hesitate. Yes. The rain didn't stop. If anything, it only got worse. What was supposed to be a short afternoon at the lake had turned into a full-blown storm, and there was no way we could make it back to the village tonight. The roads would be too muddy and dangerous, and none of us wanted to risk leading the horses through that mess in the dark. We need to find shelter, Elena said, wringing out her soaked tunic. Mathis nodded. There's an old hunting cabin not far from here. It's small, but it should be enough to keep us dry. Lucas groaned. You knew about a cabin and didn't mention it earlier? Mathis shrugged. Didn't think we'd need it. I sighed. This entire trip has been one bad decision after another. Reiner, standing beside me, smirked. You say that, but you're still enjoying yourself. I shot him a glare, but before I could respond, thunder rumbled overhead. We didn't have time to argue. Gathering our things, we followed Mathis through the rain, trudging up a narrow, overgrown path. The wet grass clung to our boots, and every step felt heavier than the last. By the time we reached the cabin, we were exhausted. The cabin was exactly what I expected. Small, slightly run down, but dry. Inside, there was a stone fireplace, a wooden table, and just enough space for all of us to sit inside without feeling too cramped. Mathis and Reiner immediately set to work on the fire, while Elena and Lucas found old blankets that had been left behind. I sat near the entrance, peeling off my soaked boots with a sigh. This is not how I planned to spend my night, I muttered. Reiner, now crouched by the fireplace, glanced over his shoulder. Not romantic enough for you? I shot him a look. You think being soaked and covered in mud is romantic? He pretended to think. I've heard worse stories. Lucas, sitting across from us, snickered. You two really are something. I sighed and ignored them both. Once the fire was going, the cabin felt warmer. The steady crackling of burning wood and the soft patter of rain on the roof created a strangely calming atmosphere. We dried off, shared what little food we had left, and eventually settled down for the night. There were no proper beds, just rough wooden floors and old furs. But after today, none of us cared. I had just started to get comfortable when Reiner sat down beside me. I raised an eyebrow. You're sticking close? You're warm. His tone was casual, as if that was all the explanation he needed. I rolled my eyes. Typical alpha excuse. I don't hear you complaining. I sighed but didn't push him away. Lucas and the others had already found their own spots, whispering quietly before sleep slowly took over. The fire dimmed, the rain outside softened, and the cabin fell into a peaceful silence. As I lay there, feeling the warmth of the fire and the steady presence of Reiner beside me, I realized something. For all the unexpected chaos today, I didn't actually mind it, and maybe, just maybe, I liked having him here more than I wanted to admit. I woke up to the smell of smoke and damp wood. The fire had nearly burned out, leaving behind only glowing embers. Outside, the rain had stopped, replaced by the distant sound of birds chirping and the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. For a moment, I just lay there, wrapped in one of the old furs, letting the quiet settle around me. Then I realized something else. I wasn't alone. Reiner had shifted closer during the night. Too close. One of his arms rested lazily across my waist, his breathing slow and steady. I froze. For a second, I debated whether I should wake him up normally or just shove him off. Before I could decide, Lucas' amused voice cut through the quiet. Well, isn't this cozy? I turned my head just enough to see him sitting up, arms crossed, with a very obnoxious smirk on his face. Shut up, I muttered, carefully pushing Reiner's arm off me. Unfortunately for me, Reiner was already awake. He let out a low chuckle but didn't move. You're up early. I shot him a glare. You're too close. You didn't seem to mind last night. I grabbed the nearest blanket and smacked him with it. After some relentless teasing from Lucas, which I did my best to ignore, we all got up and started packing our things. The storm had left the ground wet and muddy, but at least the sky was clear now. Mathis checked the horses, making sure they were well rested for the ride back. Meanwhile, Elena stretched, groaning about her sore back from sleeping on the hard floor. This was fun, she said, rolling her shoulders. Next time, though, let's plan for better sleeping arrangements. No more surprise storms, Lucas agreed. Reiner walked up beside me, adjusting the straps on his horse. Did you sleep well? I gave him a look. I would have if someone hadn't used me as a pillow. He smirked. I'm comfortable. I shook my head, but I didn't argue. With the sun rising higher in the sky, we mounted our horses and began the ride home, the morning air crisp and cool against our faces. It hadn't been the trip we planned, but somehow it had been good in its own way. And as much as I hated to admit it, maybe waking up next to Reiner hadn't been the worst part of it. It had been a week since our trip to the lake, and life had mostly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be with Reiner around. This morning, I had planned to go to the market with Lucas to restock some supplies for the week. Simple, easy, nothing unusual. But, of course, Reiner invited himself along. I was tying my boots when a knock sounded at my door. I sighed. It's open. Reiner stepped inside, looking far too awake and ready for this early in the morning. You're slow, he said. I shot him a glare. You're impatient. Lucas is already waiting. I rolled my eyes but grabbed my satchel. Fine, let's go. By the time we arrived, the market was already bustling with people. Merchants called out their wares. Fresh produce, spices, fabrics, and even weapons lined the wooden stalls. The air smelled of baked bread and roasting meat, making my stomach grumble slightly. Lucas grinned as he spotted a vendor selling honey cakes. I'm getting some of those. I was about to follow him when I noticed something. Reiner had stuck close to me the entire walk here, and even now he was still at my side. I raised an eyebrow at him. Why are you hovering? I'm not hovering. I crossed my arms. You are. He gave me a lazy smirk. Markets can be dangerous. I let out a short laugh. Oh yes, I'm sure I'll be attacked by a runaway sack of potatoes. Reiner didn't reply, but his sharp gaze kept scanning the crowd. Was he being protective? I sighed and grabbed his arm. Come on. Let's actually buy something instead of standing here like bodyguards. He didn't argue. Lucas returned with honey cakes and promptly forced one into my hand. Eat. I took a bite and immediately regretted how good it was. Reiner, watching, smirked. You like it? I scowled. Don't look so smug about it. As we moved through the market, Lucas and I gathered vegetables, herbs, dried meat, while Reiner mostly followed us and looked intimidating. At one point, a merchant tried to overcharge me for some spices, and before I could argue, Reiner stepped forward. He didn't say a word. He just stared. The merchant immediately lowered the price. Lucas snorted. Well, that's one way to bargain. I gave Reiner a look. Was that necessary? He shrugged. Saved you money. Fair point. After spending more time than planned at the market thanks to Lucas getting distracted by a jewelry stall, we finally started heading home. Lucas was already munching on another honey cake. That was fun. I sighed, adjusting my bag. If by fun you mean exhausting, sure. Reiner, walking beside me, reached into my bag and pulled out another honey cake. I gasped. Excuse me. He took a bite. I saved you money. Consider this payment. I glared. That's not how this works. He smirked. It is now. Lucas laughed. And despite my complaints, I didn't actually mind. You said, it was supposed to be a quiet evening. I had planned to cook dinner, read a book, and go to bed early. A rare luxury after a long week at the trade hall. But, of course, Reiner ruined that plan. Because just as I was about to sit down with my meal, there was a knock at my door. A very loud, impatient knock. I closed my eyes and sighed. I swear, if this is Reiner. I opened the door. It was Reiner, and he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a younger alpha, barely 20, looking nervous as hell. His clothes were covered in dust, and he kept glancing around like he expected someone to attack him. I crossed my arms. What is this? Reiner, completely unfazed, stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. This is Eric. He needs a place to stay for the night. I stared at him. And you brought him here? Reiner shrugged. You have space. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Reiner, I'll explain in a minute, he said. Then he turned to Eric. Sit. Don't touch anything. Eric nodded quickly and sat near the fire, looking incredibly uncomfortable. I sighed and closed the door. So much for a peaceful night. Once I handed Eric some food because apparently I was feeding strangers now, I turned to Reiner with a very pointed look. Talk. Reiner leaned against the table, arms crossed. He's on the run. I frowned. From what? Eric hesitated, then muttered, My pack. I stilled. Pack conflicts were messy business. Reiner explained. His pack leader tried to force him into a bond. He ran. My eyes flicked back to Eric. Forced bonding. A fate too many Omegas had faced over the years, though laws had started to change in some places. For an alpha to run from it, that was rare. And they're looking for you? I asked. He nodded. I sighed, rubbing a hand through my hair. And what do you expect me to do about it? Reiner's expression remained unreadable. Just let him stay the night. Tomorrow, I'll figure out where to take him. I glanced at Eric again. He looked tired, wary, and desperate. I exhaled. Fine. One night. Eric's relief was obvious. Thank you. Reiner smirked. Knew you'd say yes. I threw a piece of bread at him. After making sure Eric had a place to sleep, I sat by the fire, rubbing my temples. Reiner took a seat beside me. You're a good person, Andreas. I snorted. Don't start. He smirked. I mean it. I shot him a tired look. You owe me for this. His smirk widened. I'll pay you back however you want. I grabbed another piece of bread. If you say anything smug, I will throw this at you too. Reiner laughed. And despite everything, I smiled. Because somehow, life with him was never boring. It wasn't often that Reiner and I had an entire day to ourselves. Between my work at the trade hall and his duties with the town's guards, we were usually too busy to do more than grab a quick meal in the evenings. But today, for once, neither of us had obligations. Which meant I had no excuse when he showed up at my door early in the morning, arms crossed, smirking like he had already won some unspoken argument. We're going out, he said. I blinked at him. Out where? He shrugged. Anywhere. I sighed. You didn't plan anything, did you? I planned to spend the day with you. The details aren't important. I gave him a look. That's not how planning works, Reiner. He just smirked. And despite my complaints, I grabbed my cloak and followed him outside. By the time we stepped into the streets, the town was already lively. The market was bustling with merchants, travelers, and townsfolk, each tending to their business. As an Omega, I was used to drawing the occasional glance. Most were harmless, curious, assessing, sometimes even respectful. But there were always a few alphas who lingered too long. Reiner noticed. I could tell by the way he stuck close, his presence solid, unwavering. We wandered through the stalls, stopping occasionally when something caught my interest. At one point, we passed a bakery, and I barely had time to glance at the fresh pastries in the window before Reiner pulled me inside. You like sweet things, he said simply, handing a few coins to the baker. A moment later, I had a warm honey pastry in my hands. I looked at him, suspicious. Are you trying to bribe me into enjoying today? His smirk was infuriating. Is it working? I took a bite. It was very much working. By midday, we had wandered beyond the town, following a small trail that led to an open field near the river. Reiner had packed supplies, fresh bread, cheese, dried meat, and vegetables. Apparently, he had actually thought ahead for once. I'm impressed, I admitted as I sat down on the grass. You actually planned something. Reiner sat beside me, stretching out like he had all the time in the world. I can be thoughtful. I snorted. Debatable. We decided to cook a simple meal over a small fire, grilled meat with roasted vegetables. I handled most of the actual cooking while Reiner, very unhelpfully, stole pieces of food when he thought I wasn't looking. Reiner, I said flatly as he reached for another slice of bread. Yes. Do you want to cook this meal, or should I? He smirked. You're doing fine on your own. I glared. Then stop stealing ingredients. He stole another piece. I hit him with a wooden spoon. By the time we returned home, the sun was already setting, casting long shadows across the cobbled streets. I was exhausted. Spending an entire day with an alpha like Reiner was surprisingly draining. After washing up, I changed into more comfortable clothes and practically collapsed onto my bed. I barely had time to close my eyes before I heard Reiner's voice. You're tired already? I groaned. Go away. I felt the bed shift slightly as he sat at the edge. I had a good time today, he said. His voice was calmer now, quieter. I opened one eye to look at him. He wasn't smirking for once, just watching me, like he was memorizing the moment. I sighed, rolling onto my side. Yeah, I admitted. Me too, he chuckled, reaching over to ruffle my hair before I could stop him. I swatted his hand away, mumbling insults as I drifted off to sleep. And just before I completely faded into unconsciousness, I heard him murmur, "Good night, Andreas. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any new content."